Good morning. Such a busy time. My apologies for running behind. As we all know, sadly, this morning we observed the anniversary of the 9/11. Yesterday, proudly, Congress presented the Congressional Gold Medals, honoring the families, honoring the first responders, honoring those on the airplane. I mentioned then something I mention almost every year at this time, that President Lincoln cautioned against the silent artillery of time wearing away our memories. But we, every year, make sure the families know that we hope that time will dull their pain, but it will never, never dim the memory of the deeds, the courageous actions of those who tried to save others and those that we lost at that time. It seems sad that as we observe 9/11 today, we are talking about another threat to our homeland, and that is ISIS. Last night, the president was strong, formidable, and clear in presenting his strategy to deal with ISIS. A large part of it, diplomacy and leadership in terms of establishing a government, helping to establish a government in Iraq that would be one of reconciliation of the Shia, the Sunni, and the Kurds, the coordination of our NATO allies to assist in defeating ISIS, that also of the superpowers in the region, giving their support to that effort, his efforts to disrupt the finances of ISIS as well as the flow of foreign fighters into the region. On the military side, our House Democratic Caucus supports the president in the actions he has taken, the airstrikes, the deployment of a few hundred more troops to protect our interest there. People ask, do we want to vote? Well, right now we believe, as the president has stated, that he has the authority he needs to take the actions he described last night in his comprehensive strategy to defeat ISIS. As you know, recently we passed the McGovern Amendment that talked about a marker as to if we went beyond a certain point, there may be a need for a vote. We do not believe we have reached that point. Since we met last, the president has made an announcement about deferring any action on immigration until later this year. I am confident, meeting with our caucuses in the House, our Tri-Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, the Asian Pacific American Caucus, and the Congressional Black Caucus, all of whom have a big interest in the immigration issue. We feel confident that there's a great deal the president can do that is at his administrative discretion, and that we're confident that that will happen. And we want people who are concerned about this to be hopeful that by Thanksgiving and Christmas, there'll be more security in their lives because of some discretion that the president will execute. All of this is interesting and important and the center of our attention. What is at the center of attention of the American people is something we share with them as well, and that is the concern about the economy. Despite incredible progress under the president's administration of reducing the deficit by more than half, by having the unemployment rate come from over 10% to 6.1% since he took office, by having 50-some months of sustained growth of private sector job creation, 50-some months in a row. The list, the stock market just soaring. So many indicators of economic success, but nonetheless, still great uncertainty among the American people. And that's why we've put forth our middle class jumpstart that in the first 100 days of a new Congress, we would pass legislation that would create good-paying jobs here in the United States by growing infrastructure, build America bonds to grow the infrastructure, to build the infrastructure of our country, paid for by closing loopholes, tax loopholes that given to businesses to send jobs overseas, by reducing the cost of education, by allowing students to renegotiate their loans at a lower rate, and third, our initiatives about women. When women succeed, America succeeds. That's not just the title of our economic agenda for equal pay, for equal work, et cetera. It's a statement of fact. And so we really are enthusiastic about how we move forward, and I'm very proud of my members over the break, how they kept the drumbeat going on this. On they've done it electronically, they've done it in traditional means of communication, town halls, seminars, every kind of press event, but also electronically. And I think on one of our women's agenda issues, we have like 54 million communications on the subject, not just what we put out, but how it was transmitted beyond there. So as I say, I'm proud of our caucus and the work they're doing for the middle class, which is the backbone of our democracy. And I'm proud of the president. I'm proud of his deliberate approach to this, the success of his leadership to make a big difference in Iraq in terms of having a new government. And I pay tribute to Joe Biden for his work on that as well, for the work with our NATO allies, to be working together on this issue, and the superpowers in the region to do their part. With that, I'd be pleased to take any questions you may have. Yes, sir.
John Yoo, a lawyer in the Bush administration, who gave President Bush some powers through a legal memo that had the White House interpreted back then to combat terrorism and the role of commander-in-chief without necessary congressional approval, said Obama has adopted the same view of war powers as the Bush administration. Do you share that view?
No, I do believe that when we passed the authorization in 2001 following Afghanistan, it was to narrow the War Powers Act. When our country is, when someone strikes our country, as was on 9/11, it triggers any and all powers of the commander-in-chief. What we did with that resolution was to narrow it to the purposes, and I don't have it right here, but if you read it, you'll see that it's a narrower interpretation. What the Bush administration, how they interpreted and for how long is another issue. But he's not relevant right now. What we're talking about right now is ISIS is a threat. We have to work together to destroy them, and that is the subject at hand. I didn't approve of anything he said or did when he was in office, much less care about his opinion right now. Yes, ma'am.
You don't think President Obama is following his opinion right now?
I think the president is following the law. Yes, ma'am.
Given the threat the president outlined that ISIS posed, and you mentioning it, doesn't Congress have a bigger role beyond just voting on the narrow authorization for Title X? Isn't it shirking its responsibility by just focusing on that issue alone?
Well, Title X is really an important part of this, and among the initiatives that the president talked about last night, the idea of our training Syrian moderates to fight ISIS in Syria is an important part of it, and it's very timely. And that's why we're talking about that now. I would hope that it would be in this the CR, because that's the train leaving the station, and the president needs this to happen now. There's talk of people doing it separately, but that takes longer than just putting it on, again, the CR that's leaving the station. But that is by no means to say that that is the limitation on our involvement in this. In fact, in the CR, there's a presidential request for $2 billion for meeting needs in Eastern Europe, read Ukraine, Iraq, and other concerns in the Middle East. So there's even another provision in the bill to that end. But in terms of this authorization, this is a big debate. We're having a briefing right now. As I leave here, I'll go to another briefing on the subject. And again, yes, I do believe Congress has a role. What I did say, though, was what the president is doing now, I think he has the legal authority to do. I know he does. I've studied this issue for a very long time. Yes, sir.
You've been in the intelligence sphere for a very, very long time. How far do your concerns go as we take new steps to confront ISIS about the aftermath, the potential aftermath of the Saudis arming their assets, their Sunni assets in Iraq, the Iranians arming the Shiite militias anew, us arming the factions in Syria, all to come at ISIS sort of in a triangle here, and eventually there will be a lot more armed people in Iraq, not only weapons, but battle-hardened people with their incentives changed at all? What's your vision of the aftermath after we do this?
Well, I started my comments in praise of the president about the establishment of a different government in Iraq, which I think is, if that had not happened, the situation that you're describing, I believe, would be exacerbated, although your concerns go beyond Iraq, I understand. Could enter Syria. But so to have a government that understands its responsibilities, that it's not just about who the Shia are in charge, so the Shia rule, and we don't pay any attention to the needs of the Sunnis or the Kurds, that provided fertile territory for some, especially Sunni, to be responsive to ISIS when they were originally coming through. We always, when you're arming people, you're always concerned. And also, the ISIS, I'm concerned, is a mutating thing. You know, what is it that it becomes and what emerges out of all of this. So that's why it has to be comprehensive. The Europeans are very interested because they have thousands. We may have up to 100 foreign fighters from the U.S. who have gone there. The Europeans have thousands. More than 10,000 maybe, who have passports from their countries, who are citizens of their country, who have joined the fighting force. So the concern goes beyond our concern about our homeland. That's our primary responsibility. But this is a very big deal, and we have to deal with it in a way that is not just, Hannah Arendt talked about it, the use of violence. People think one more act of violence is going to end it, but it's just an endless flywheel. No, we have to be smart about it as to how we go forward, so that we are having not just military initiatives, but political initiatives and diplomatic initiatives too, so that we reduce the fertile territory for more recruitment of terrorists.
But then what level of confidence has been transmitted to you, Madam Leader, from the administration that Iraqi Coalition 2.0 or whatever we're on now is actually going to work this time?
Well, we have to support it. And one other part that I didn't mention was continuing the humanitarian assistance in some of those regions. As you see, what the U.S. did to help those people on the mountain was life-saving, but it was also helpful in having people understand that we're there to help the people. We're not there to help the government. But to have a government that is there for all of the people is essential for us to be putting in resources, because your question is exactly the right one. The government has to work, or otherwise the investment that we're making otherwise, diplomatically, politically, intelligence-wise, militarily, falls into a chaotic situation. So we can't have that. It's challenging and it's complicated. But that's why I think the president's deliberativeness and how he has dealt with this step by step to put us in a place now where we can go to the next step, because the first initials, not everything has been done as far as the government is concerned, but a great deal has been done. Let's see, who hasn't? Yes, sir.
On the continuing resolution, two questions. One, how do you feel about setting the end date for the Ex-Im, the reauthorization date for the Ex-Im Bank, separate from the December 11th end date for the CR? And then the Senate, there's some talk of trying to set that end date for the CR actually in the next year. How do you feel about those, and how would those affect any Democratic support for CR here?
Well, CRs are never something to be very, very proud of because it means that we haven't been able to get all of our work done in a timely fashion. Sometimes they're a convenience, and sometimes they are an excuse not to get, well, let's just do a CR. And I say that as one who's had to use CRs myself. But the CR end date for this year is very appropriate. That's what the CR is, just to get us past the October 1st beginning of a new fiscal year. So the end date in December is an appropriate one so that we will pass something, an omnibus, a better bill, a more responsible way to advance our appropriations for the next year. I don't think we should delay it any longer. What are the choices? I mean, we know what the decisions are that need to be made. If they don't think they can be made within the next 10 days, then they should be made within the next couple of months. In terms of the expiration date for the Ex-Im Bank, I'm totally opposed to that. I think that the Ex-Im Bank is a formidable instrument for competitiveness for the U.S. businesses, large and small. I think that it affects every region of the country in terms of job creation and stability. I think that it has already having an impact on contracts because there's uncertainty about the longevity of the bank and even its existence, and that if you put the date to next June, you are effectively putting a marker as to the demise of the Ex-Im Bank. So let's just go forward. I like the HEC bill that has a long-term authorization for the Ex-Im Bank, and I would hope that those forces outside the Congress, communities that are affected, businesses that are affected, and the rest, because this is about job creation, it's about keeping America number one, it's about facilitating our exports, and to play with this is really damaging, because if you're dealing with a bank and you're talking about a few months and a few months and a few months, you're not talking about the stability and the certainty that businesses need. And some of these are very big contracts. So I just, again, as far as the forces outside the Congress, I don't know why they're not more active with their Republican friends to say this is not something to mess with. Is that all? Were there the three? Okay. Yes, sir.
Madam Leader, there never really has been the much hoped for peace dividend following the 9/11 mindset and foreign policy, et cetera, as we wound down the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Do some of your caucus members, though, worry that as this fight against ISIS gets expanded, it will siphon off a lot of dollars for social programs?
Yes.
That they may favor?
Yes. Well, it's some necessities that honor our responsibilities to meet the needs of the American people. I do not think, from the evidence that I see before me, I judge that what we're talking about is by no means of the scale of where we have been before. This is focused, targeted, discrete, and it's not engaging in hundreds of thousands of troops being deployed. In fact, it's exactly the opposite of that. But certainly every time we talk about any initiative for the use of force or initiation of hostilities, it's a question of resources, and we have so many unmet needs in our own country. It really was more of concern to members when we were building roads and schools and hospitals and all the rest in Iraq and Afghanistan when we had unmet needs in our own country. But actually, that part of diplomacy is important to security as well. But in answer to your question, yes, there is a concern, and it's been brought up at our meetings. But we have a first responsibility to protect and defend. That is the oath we take. I think I only have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
Madam Leader,
Yes, ma'am.
has there been concerns raised in the Democratic caucus in voting for this authorization and ending up in a situation potentially in the future where you have sort of a political pushback, much like you did for the authorization for Iraq?
Well, we didn't vote for the authorization for Iraq, so we didn't get to a lot of, and House Democrats overwhelmingly voted against the Iraq initiative in 2002. October initiation was in 2003 of hostilities. But right now, we're watching, observing, and judging. We've been briefed. The president made his speech last night, which was very strong and convincing. Our members are proud and support the president. We're being briefed right now once again. And so the question is, what is the challenge? What are our resources? How do we engage other countries? Who's the recipient? What is the country that we're dealing with in terms of having a new government? And what is our definition of success? But it is not about whether we take a vote or not. We're not at that point because we believe the president has the authority, and so it's deliberative. It's open to new information. That's what our caucus is about, and I'm very proud of the thoughtful way that they have approached it. And I will go back to where I began on this subject, and that is that a matter of a couple of months ago, we did vote for the McGovern Amendment on the floor. And I think I have it right here in what it says. The president shall not deploy or maintain United States armed forces in a sustained combat role in Iraq without specific statutory authorization for such use enacted after the date of the enactment of this concurrent resolution. So hopefully we don't have to go beyond what the president is doing now. We won't need that vote, but we stand ready to have that discussion. Thank you all very much. I have to go back to work.